All over our cities, along our coastlines and across our green and pleasant land, an invisible army is fighting a never-ending war. Their enemy is the filth that we create and the vermin that thrive on it. Welcome to the hidden world of the Grime Fighters. On Grime Fighters tonight, Dagenham property manager Tony despairs.
Another room of delights.
Litter picker Lou gets romantic.
Can you imagine making love in an alleyway like this?
Art restorer Mark diligently deals with what the barn owls left behind.
This kind of level of droppings is sort of, bigger than anything I had to deal with before.
And enforcement officer Mitch is shocked.
I have to tell you, I've never come across a site like this before.
An Englishman's home is his castle, but Dagenham housing manager Tony has to deal with some of the council properties that look like dungeons. This morning he's come to assess a terraced house in the borough. The tenants have been evicted and he has to get the property cleared, refurbished and back on the rental market as quickly as possible.
Right, another void in Dagenham. I wonder what we'll find in this one.
Words can't describe what confronts him.
Ugh.
For Tony, this could be the start of a bad day.
Absolutely lovely. To say the least, it's not very pleasant. It's absolutely full of rubbish and flies. Absolutely reeks. The further you get into it, the worse it gets.
Immediately it's obvious that this is yet another nightmare property. But what's depressing is that he's seeing more and more of them.
The general trend is the properties are getting as bad as this. Unfortunately, this is becoming the norm. This is probably getting to 50% of our properties, this. It's a bit sad, really.
But Tony soon discovers one of the reasons why this kind of devastation is all too common.
I don't know if you see in there, there's a syringe. So there's a good chance that they've been taking drugs in it. It could be sharps anywhere. Also, it's all the signs of everything else. There's more cans inside of the old favourite.
What makes the situation worse is that there's evidence that children were also living in these conditions.
It seems that nobody's got any pride, got no concern for how they live. If they've got kids, it's going to affect the kids. When the kids get older, if they're living in this, they're going to think it's the norm, and you've got another generation that's going to live like this. And I mean, as for the kids seeing, obviously, we've had drug taking, cannabis smoking, heavy drinking. God knows what it's done to the kids. It's just sad. Just makes you wonder what in their life has got them to this stage. And I don't suppose we'll ever know.
Tony needs to assess the rest of the property quickly so he can get it cleared and refurbished as soon as possible. But things aren't getting any easier.
Another room of delights.
The fence, so we'll be as quick as we can here.
Fortunately, Lou seems to be taking the change to his daily routine in his stride.
David's been transferred to another contract, and now I work with Sam and Gary. So we're doing a bit of bonding and getting together now. Do I miss Dave? I do. He never stopped telling me jokes, did he?
But if Gary and Sam think the ribbing will stop now Dave's gone, they're very much mistaken.
Gary shouts at me a lot, but I can take it. Because he lives with his mother, Gary does. He ain't married, am you, Gaz? No. He likes his lager too much. I bet them snails. You like snails, don't you? Hey? Oh, sorry, he's Italian. I thought he was French.
The joking's over and the dog's antics are finally getting to Lou.
All these tyres, I just can't work it out. It's just a breeding ground for rats. Mind you, I'll tell you something. If there's any rats here that have an headache off that dog because it's giving me a bloody headache, I tell you.
With the fly tip cleared, Lou can spruce up the nearby alley.
Me and Gary's going to have a quick litter pick up here, just to make it look a bit tidy.
The odd bit of rubbish provides a welcome distraction from the dog.
Yes, that's the Durex packet here that's looked like it's been open. Well, it's not there. Can you imagine making love in an alleyway like this? No, I can't either.
But all too quickly, the dog gets its way.
We're here working, but people live here. Could you live next door to a dog that was barking like that all day? Well, I couldn't, I'll tell you now.
With the alley clear, Lou and the boys can move on to more peaceful surroundings.
Come on, lads, let's get away from here.
In Dagenham, Essex, Council Property Manager Tony is continuing his assessment of the nightmare two-bedroom house. It's onto the kitchen and downstairs bathroom.
Another major operation. Look at the cooker and that. You can imagine what it must have been like when they were living here. And out these walls, and it's just covered with absolute filth. I just wonder if this is a resident in the bath. It seems to be a door fetish in Barking and Dagenham. I don't know whether that's supposed to be a repair. Why put that on there when you've got that and that? It's obviously been done on purpose. That's not accidental. It's not as if, oh dear, I've banged into it. I mean, that's been punched. It's actually that one there. As you can see, it's absolutely right through the door. I mean, there's some punch to go through that. Which just seems a total and absolute waste of time.
Finally, it's time to venture upstairs.
Right, another nice, neat, tidy bedroom. Yeah, we was obviously right about the kids, so we can safely say that there were more children than bedrooms here. Obviously they're a bit cramped, so they've not bothered to ask for a move, because normally the council are very good with people who need to move that have got children that need bedrooms. Obviously they weren't too worried about the kids being cramped up, I wouldn't have thought.
Amongst the clutter, some more interesting items catch Tony's eye.
Underwear, whips, that's quite common as well. And with the amount of flies that are in here, it's probably for fly swatting, I don't know, but they seem to get an awful lot.
Tony has now seen enough. There's no time to lose in getting this place cleared, and the honour falls to extreme cleaners Gary and Luke. Suited and booted, the boys can look forward to the grisly task ahead. When it comes to a career in grime fighting, the opportunities are endless and infinitely diverse. Here at West Wickham Park in Buckinghamshire, a roosting barn owl has ruined a small section of the 18th century paintings which adorn one of the classical facades. The National Trust is relying on the skill of specialist restorer Mark to painstakingly clean the painting.
This kind of level of droppings is sort of, bigger than anything we've had to deal with before. It's a very delicate painted surface. It's one of the very, very few external wall paintings in England left. In fact, West Wickham is incredibly fortunate in that it's got quite a few of them. We've basically got to do this using only dry methods because the paint surface is quite soluble in water, so we're going to have to try and do it without using any liquid.
So Mark needs to identify which tools he needs for the job.
I'm going to try out various different types of brushes and see which one of those works. They're sort of stencil brushes and cut down paint brushes and things. I've also got these sponges called Wishab sponges. They're self-abrading granular rubber. We can cut them into sort of wedges, and basically they abrade against the surface and roll up the dirt and droppings in this case.
Armed with his weapons of choice, Mark climbs the scaffolding to take a closer look at the damage.
Well, it's pretty bad. A lot of the white droppings, which I think should be reasonably easy to remove, it's just almost like a white lime wash has been splattered on it. The darker bits look like they're a bit thicker and therefore they may be a bit harder to remove. It's a lot of sort of insect debris and cobwebs. So what I'm going to do is just give it a bit of a dust down first and just get rid of anything that's loose that comes off first, and then we know that we're left just with the droppings.
After gently brushing away the surface debris, Mark tries out his brushes on the paintwork itself.
Just going to try a fiberglass brush that I put on a surgical glove so we don't get the fibres and sticking in the hand.
The fiberglass brush seems to be breaking the surface, and together with the sponge, they might prove to be the perfect combination.
It seems to be coming off reasonably easily, both the fiberglass brush and the sponge. The sponge might well be the way to go. And one of the nice things about these sponges is that they're very, very gentle.
Mark has identified the way forward thanks to his experience and, most importantly, his patience. Now he can return the painting to its former glory. But cleaning this area is likely to take Mark a week. Coming up, litter picker Lou flourishes in flowers. Extreme cleaners Gary and Luke confront the Dagenham house.
Nice syringe there, sitting there in the children's room amongst the toys.
And Environmental Enforcement Officer Mitch deals with a typical Saturday night in London's Soho. Throughout the country, an army of professionals are continuing to dedicate their daily lives to waging war on the nation's grime. In Wolverhampton, the sun is shining and Lou, the city's proudest, has moved off the streets to gentler surroundings. The ornate gardens and boating lake in West Park.
The general workers are really busy. All right, lads, carry on, thank you.
For Lou, there's good reason for his improving mood.
Today, they've asked me to come into the park just to help out. There's a couple of lads that normally do this job are on holiday. You know, I'm used to going out there on the streets, fly tipping. Complete and utter change for me. I absolutely love it, but obviously, if they give me the chance to come into the park to do a bit like this, I jump at it and I come here racing, because I enjoy it.
As well as the general litter, the main problem in the park is caused by the water birds. The only way to remove the evidence is to rake it off the surface.
Oh, look! A dead fish. Ah, look at that. Looks like we're saving Nemo. We'll put this over here safe so somebody can claim it later. We'll put it on here.
For a change, it's not rubbish in the park, it's what nature has left behind.
The people that use this, the general public, keep this clean because it looks nice. If it's clean, they look after it. And this is what tends to happen in this park.
With the barrow empty, Lou is on song.
Singing cockles and mussel and antillivo.
The next stop is one of Lou's favourite parts of the city.
Absolutely gorgeous. This is our masterpiece. This is the centrepiece of the park. Just cast your eyes over here and see how wonderful it looks. Me and the lads here are just going to have a quick walk round the park and pick any litter up, all right?
A quick whiz round to admire the view. It seems a perfect end to what could have been a very difficult day. In Dagenham, extreme cleaners Gary and Luke are making good headway clearing the two-bed house. Amazingly, the boys have spent most of their lives working as a team.
We went to school together and then joined the army together. And now we do this together.
Gary and Luke served their country in Bosnia and Germany. Being in the army has stood them in good stead to deal with the challenges of extreme cleaning.
You don't mind what you're going to go to. You just get on with the job and just do it, really. I suppose, like in the army, that's the way. If you get given a task, you go and do it and do the job well. So you just do exactly the same with this, really.
Having worked together for so long also helps with the daily grind.
So it's nice to come work with your best mate every day. You know, you just crack on together and get it done. So, I mean, we're both pretty similar personalities and that. We don't moan, we just sort of get on with it, you know. If you stand there moaning about it, you've wasted time and he'll be getting on with it, you know.
As they delve further, some family secrets come to light.
You do find the porn magazines and videos and whatever else, and you get the sex toys along with it as well.
Nothing shocks me at all no more.
But mixing drug taking and children gets pretty close.
Nice syringe there, sitting there in the children's room amongst the toys. They shouldn't be having syringes and needles around them. So it does make you sad, really. It's horrible. It's horrible. So I want my kids living like it. I don't think anyone would, really.
After a morning of hard graft and too many trips to the dump, Gary and Luke have eventually cleared the house.
All done.
All done.
Job done.
I've got to admit, I didn't think it'd be 3 lorry loads.
No, definitely not.
But sometimes it's deceiving.
And that's us. Done.
With the house empty, Tony can make his final assessment. It's not as bad as he thought, apart from the kitchen.
It's not really improved the kitchen by removing the stuff. In actual fact, you can see how dirty it is now. It's absolutely filthy. How they could possibly eat anything in here is beyond me. Just absolutely awful.
Tony can now tell his refurbishment team to come in and transform the property. As always, he remains optimistic.
We don't give up, we just keep on plodding on and try and get them to the best standard as we can. Eventually we'll get somebody in here that'll respect the place, you know, and is pleased just to get a council place. Unfortunately, we seem to get a lot that just want to wreck them.
It's Saturday night in London's West End, and Westminster Council Enforcement Officer Mitch is patrolling the streets. Some of the 1 million daily visitors are drinking the night away. It's up to Mitch to tackle illegally dumped rubbish and the grim legacy of excessive partying. He also has to deal with some more unusual situations.
I have to tell you, I've never come across a site like this before. 5 people underneath 2 sleeping bags in the open street, under no cover whatsoever. Hello? Hello? I'm afraid they're well out of it.
With no response, Mitch hasn't any option but to phone the police to move them on.
OK, that's been reported to our colleagues over in the Metropolitan Police. They'll be down here very shortly and moving them on.
But luckily, there are signs of life.
They are moving on, and that's the best thing, and they're all going their separate ways, which is probably even better.
Mitch has to confront anything that's thrown at him during his shift, but he reckons his presence on the streets is appreciated.
I think for the many members of the public, many members of our customers, really, the City Inspectorate is the 4th emergency service in Westminster. The public pretty much have a respect and appreciation for the hard work that we have to do. The hard work we have to do. Not all the public, though.
But in a back alley in Soho, there are some things that Mitch wishes he didn't have to sort out.
We've got the real nasty side of human fouling. We've got excrement along the wall and on the ground here, and lots of urine. It's pretty horrendous, guys. It's not good at all. I'm going to get that cleared up now.
Mitch summons a vehicle called the Street Flusher. Westminster Council are the only local authority in the country to run this 24-hour service.
That's a lot better. Pretty appalling sight. Some very, very dirty people. It's the nastier side of the job, but it looks better and it smells better, and I'm pretty happy with that now.
Moments after the Street Flusher departs, there's trouble again, despite one of Mitch's temporary urinals being parked just a few feet away.
And what's that, sir? Classic case. Someone just not opening their eyes. A public urinal sitting slap bang in the middle of the street, and a chap's just walked around and attempted to urinate against the fence in here. Absolutely ridiculous. Do I have to go and demonstrate it?
In the early hours, with most of the revellers gone, Mitch discovers a little memento on Charing Cross Road.
OK, so it's about 2:30 in the morning. Someone has had, I take it, an entertaining night. We've got to get it cleaned up. We don't want anyone slipping in that.
Mitch has to recall the street flushing vehicle.
It's very wet, very fresh.
But as always, he remains upbeat.
We've seen and confronted all 3 forms of human fouling, and what an incredible night. I hope you're pleased, because I'm certainly not.
As morning breaks over West Wickham Park, specialist restorer Mark comes to the end of his painstaking task, cleaning some 18th century wall paintings. He's been here so long, he's become part of the furniture.
It's taken the 5 days that I estimated it would do. We're just coming down to the last couple of feet. The droppings have sort of thinned out quite a bit here. The worst of the damage was obviously at the top. By the time we get down to the bottom here, it's much thinner, and the droppings are more just the sort of the white, almost like a lime wash. It doesn't have so much of the urine and the actual faeces and so on involved with it, so it's considerably easier to clean off. It's just almost like a surface dusting.
Mark has spent the week diligently working away, removing all evidence of the barn owl with his fiberglass brushes and abrasive sponges. In his daily routine, Mark is required to clean up after bats and many different species of birds, but owls cause the most difficulty.
Owl poo is particularly dangerous to paintings and other vulnerable surfaces because of their diet, which is sort of insects and small animals and so on. You get a lot of nitrates in the faeces, which is alkaline and caustic, and that will obviously eat into the surface of the vulnerable paint. It also is combined with uric acid from the urea, the urine, and the two in combination, sort of a pretty violent cocktail for any kind of sensitive decorative surfaces.
The National Trust now want to make sure that in future paintings and birds won't mix.
Some spikes have been put in along the top to stop roosting happening either from owls or from pigeons or any other kind of birds, and obviously prevention is better than cure.
After a week of laborious endeavour, Mark congratulates himself on a job well done.
I think this does make the East Portico paintings look much more cared for. I think before, when the droppings were essentially disfiguring the whole of this corner, it looked as though nobody really cared about what's, you know, a terribly important painting. It's improved it, and hopefully the public will appreciate that, and also take on board the need for, you know, sort of constant maintenance that all these buildings have to have.
One person would agree, if he could, Giuseppe Mattia Borghese, the artist who painted this masterpiece some 260 years ago. After the filming of the programme, Dagenham property manager Tony gave the go-ahead for refurbishment of the two-bed house. And now Mark's work at West Wickham is finished, the complete restoration of the paintings will begin shortly. But first, up and down the country, the economic downturn is playing a massive part in increasing the pressure faced by local councils dealing with the legacy of empty properties and squatters. Here in Leicester, this newly refurbished development of 16 flats has fallen foul of the credit crunch, with all the apartments being repossessed by the mortgage companies. Today, Enforcement Officer Steve from the council, supported by the police, is here to evict some squatters who've been continually breaking into the block.
This property's been vacant for about 6 months now. It's been boarded up by various people, but we've had a problem with drug addicts going in, breaking in, and basically we're going to have to really secure it extremely well today to stop them getting back in again.
With the police gaining access to the building, a steady stream of squatters reluctantly start to appear.
Pass your stuff out, gents. Just collect your kit, fellas, and we'll just do some checks with you outside before we release you, okay? Satisfied customer. Yeah.
With a total of 4 squatters evicted from the ground floor, Steve and Sergeant Hutchins can now move on to the flats above. This time, though, a little more force is required.
Okay. Clear. Clear. Yeah, nobody in that one.
After having a look round, the police are satisfied that the rest of the flats are empty.
We're happy that these premises are clear.
With the all clear from the police, Steve can now carry out a thorough inspection of every flat and find out what surprises have been left by the squatters for him to deal with.
Oh dear.
It's not a job he relishes. In Wolverhampton, the sun is shining, and Lou and Dave, the council's proudest litter pickers, are starting yet another regular shift with a bit of a constitutional down Bright Street. Today they're accompanied by a new recruit, Simon, and for Lou, the agreeable conditions herald a good start to the proceedings.
What could be nicer? Look at the lovely sunshine and me walking down here, picking a bit of litter up. Once it's done, I'll feel as if I've done a good job. It's what they pay me for, and I'm proud of what I do. I don't care if people look down on me. This is my job, and I'm proud of it. I like doing it. No trouble at all.
So Lou's even more determined to make sure that even the smallest things won't wreck his day.
That's probably a child's rattle. I'll just put it in here just in case the child lives there, and I don't want a rattle in my bag making a noise, keeping me awake. Put it with these bricks, all right? There's loads of bricks there. That'll do lovely. Probably be through the shop window later on. How are you there, kid? All right, mate?
After some 20 years behind a desk, the new recruit, Simon, finds clearing the streets is making him view the world in a very different light.
I can't believe that people just discard everything. You know, they throw fag packets out the windows, bottles of pop. It is a mess. I dread to think what it'd be like if it was left for a week or so, because there's just so much rubbish.
Simon's determination to stay in work after losing his job as an architect and being prepared to pick up litter has clearly impressed Lou.
Simon's very good, actually. We've We've had him now 3 weeks and we're training him up. He's been used to sitting on his backside in an office and now we're out here. I think he'll make a good picker. He didn't want to be sitting at home. It just goes to prove people with education, they'll take anything on now. He's trying to bring a young family up and it's hard, it's tough out here now, but he's getting there and fair play to the lad, he's having a go.
After only 45 minutes, Bright Street is looking spotless. Lou and the boys can now call it quits and move on to their next job. In Leicester, Environmental Enforcement Officer Steve is now starting his tour of the flats to evaluate their state after the squatters' eviction.
You can see what's happened here. This is an example where somebody's defaulted on the mortgage and somebody's been under the lock change.
These flats may all have been privately owned, but as far as the council is concerned, they represent a serious health hazard to the public, with needles and drug paraphernalia strewn throughout. And it falls upon Steve to take responsibility for the flat's future security and cleanliness.
Oh, right, the first thing that hits you when you come in here, it's that smell. There's stale urine, I think it is. Oh dear, yes. I think this is where we've been having a bit of a party by the looks of it. This is going to need to be completely cleaned out, carpets removed, so we'll have to get some skips in and do that. We can't leave this like this. There's obviously clear evidence of a substantial drug injection here, needles on the table. There's no sharps boxes, they're not disposing of them properly, so you could well find them stuck in, quite often we find them stuck in the sides of the beds and stuck under the beds into the mattress. We will have to get specialist contractors in to clear this because there's obviously a risk of needle stick injury. The other problem is because we've had drug addicts in here, we don't know what else they've been up to, so there's highly likely, there could be all sorts of things left in here. So I'm not going to delve too deeply.
But as is often the case, it's not just the needles that now constitute a health risk. The squatters' bathroom habits leave a lot to be desired.
Ah, yes, right. Oh dear. We knew they were going for the toilet somewhere. Oh dear. That's where the smell's coming from then. This is the kind of thing that we have to get cleaned up as a local authority. We can't leave this sort of stuff lying around.
It's soon apparent to Steve that most of the flats are in a potentially hazardous state. He and his team are going to have to work fast to secure the building.
It's not safe to leave it like this. We'll make it secure today, just stop the drug addicts getting back in, and then we'll take longer term action to clear it out. We can't leave a property like this in the middle of Leicester.
Not only is there the danger that someone could get hurt entering these flats, there's also the real threat of the building becoming a fire hazard. So Steve is taking no chances this time in boarding up the block. He hopes these grills will prove impregnable.
We've had panelling on there before, timber panelling before, and it just gets ripped off. This stuff is screwed to the brickwork, so it's hard work to get it off, and this should keep them out.
Steve can only pray that his team's hard work will keep the squatters out, while he serves notice on the mortgage lenders to force them to pay for the clear-up. In central London, beneath the bustling streets, there are over 40,000 miles of sewers. The upkeep of the system is down to an elite team of highly skilled technicians known for centuries as the Flushers. Today, Rob, a veteran of some 40 years, and novice Dan are preparing to venture into a sewer off the Victoria Embankment to confront their biggest problem. More than 90 tonnes of fat is poured into the sewers annually by London's restaurants. In the system, it congeals and causes over half the 100,000 blockages the Flushers have to deal with every year.
We've had a report there's a lot of fat down here, so we're actually coming down to have a look and see how we're going to sort the problem out.
They descend with gas monitors bleeping. If there are toxic gases, they'll quickly be alerted. Rob and Dan soon stumble on an old friend.
Yeah, you've got a rat there, look. You're not going to find too many down here. They like it nice and dry. They keep up out of the way. They more likely drowned when there was the last storm. They can only hold their breaths for so long and then they drown the same as we do. Off we go.
London sewers, built in Victorian times, were mainly designed to deal with sewage. Now, as well as the fat, recent cleansing products are causing big problems.
It's the wipes and things, the baby wipes, the wipe of the baby cottons and things like that. they just don't break down at all. They go right the way through, right the way down into the works. They all have to be taken out before the sewage is actually treated.
This build-up of fat and wipes creates a thick crust on top of the sewage flow. To gauge the extent of the problem, Rob has no option but to hop in and take a closer look.
Go on then, Dan, you can put the ladder in.
Oh, thanks. If it looks as good as it smells.
I just don't think about this when I eat porridge. It's not too solid, you know. If we drop the flow in here and then get a jetter in here and stir it up.
Blast it through.
Yeah, blast it through.
They will be able to divert the sewage flow and then can use a power jetter to flush the crust away. But they can't combat the smell. Face masks would be useless.
When you're working in it all day long, it actually gets into your pores. And you can have a shower, 2 or 3 showers a day, and it just stays with you.
With the blockage assessed and a solution decided upon, Rob and Dan can now carry on with their inspection further downstream. Coming up, Steve's worst nightmare comes true, Rob and Dan meet some old acquaintances, and Lou stumbles across a drugs den. Throughout the country, an army of professionals are continuing to dedicate their daily lives to waging war on the nation's grime. In Leicester, a few days after evicting some habitual squatters from a newly refurbished block of flats, Environmental Officer Steve's worst nightmare has come true. Overnight, someone has managed somehow to break back into the property, and the top floor flats have been set on fire. At first light, he's on site to inspect the damage.
Oh dear, what a mess. This is what we were trying to prevent by getting the property boarded up, trying to stop all this happening. The building's not structurally safe as well neither at the moment. This is now ruined and it's going to cost a lot of money to sort it out. All these timbers have been weakened, the complete structure's going to have to be taken down and rebuilt. It's going to be an enormous cost, so it's a lot of work that could have been prevented. There's going to be a lot of toxic debt in here, I think.
It's highly likely that the whole block will now have to be demolished and rebuilt. This may be an extreme case, but it graphically illustrates what the councils are up against in their fight to keep one step ahead of the squatters and drug users. The dangers of the discarded syringes still remain.
Whilst you can't see them, we know there were needles here before, that there'll be needles everywhere, yeah, and all sorts of material washed down by the fire brigade when they put the fire out. So all this material in here is contaminated. You know, it's got to be taken out very carefully.
Until last night, Steve was responsible for an expensive clear-up of the hundreds of needles, drug paraphernalia and human excrement. Now he's left with a burnt-out building and a scene of total devastation. In Wolverhampton, litter picker Lou is also having his day interrupted by the legacy left behind by drug addicts. He and the team have been called off their regular job roster to clear a drugs den in a local park.
We've had a call at the office to say that somebody's been camping out in this particular area. I know it to be a known drug den at one time, so we're just going to have a quick nosy round. We'll try and clear this out, but we must be on our guard for needles.
Before they can get to grips with the rubbish, the boys need to make a meticulous search of the area for needles. They put them into what's called a sharps box.
Now look at that needle there. I've just picked that up out the bushes. It's got, what, a needle on over an inch long, the needle is. Fancy that, just stick it into your children's body part, should I say. You'd be frightened for weeks while the tests were going on.
With the area now free from needles, they can start clearing the tree branches, revealing what seems to be the drug user's alfresco living room.
There's a settee there. We'll see if there's anybody asleep underneath it, OK? Here's a nice bit of carpet. Do you want it for your flat or what? Do you know David's that tight he wakes up in the night to see how much sleep he's lost?
These sights may be commonplace for Lou, but they constantly underline his despair of modern society.
When I was young, you could go anywhere and what have you. Where I lived, you never even locked your doors at night. But now it's a sign of the times. They're doing crime, they're robbing people's houses. Look at that, just like a cosh. Now say, you was walking down this road at night, people walking down, got no money. and pick up something like that and say, hey, give me your money, what would you do? You'd give your money to them, wouldn't you? I would. I wouldn't like that round my head. What are they doing these days?
Simon, fresh from his 20 years as an architect, seems to be settling in well to his new occupation.
Look, he's enjoying it. Hey, the other day I caught him using 2 hands.
Simon seems to have become a regular part of the team, but Lou is fully aware that this job may only be a stopgap, and he's anxious to help.
Anybody who's looking round, wants a nice young lad here, do a few drawings, he's available.
Simon, though, seems pretty happy to stick around.
The office I used to work in, if you're new, you'd be lucky if anybody spoke to you for about 3 months. It's very different. I'm enjoying it. We have a good crack, so that's the main thing.
With their work practically over, all they have to do is to get the old sofa on the van.
If I wanted a job moving sofas, I'd have gone and worked at DFS. But as it is, I work for Wolverhampton City Council, the best council in the land. Come on, Simon, on the van.
In central London, sewer flushers Rob and Dan are continuing their daily schedule. They're about to look at another sewer run off the Victoria Embankment in Westminster. Descending into this Victorian brick-built sewer, it's soon obvious that conditions are quite different from the modern, concrete-clad system they came across this morning.
The fungi that you see growing here grows on the fat and slime that's on the wall of the sewer. I don't think it's edible. I'm not going to try it to find out. I mean, as you can see, the flow coming through here is peak flow at the moment. We're, you know, sort of up past 12, 1 o'clock. Everybody's going to lunch, everybody's having their breaks and going to the toilet. This is sewage, as you can see, but in that there's fat, there's rags and everything else that shouldn't come down into the sewer system.
As they go further down the flow to the bottom of the stairs, they can retrieve some samples from the build-up for closer inspection. The main cause of the problem, as ever, is thousands of baby wipes that don't degrade, and the congealed fat from the restaurants above.
This is the solid fat that's been down here for quite a while. You can see it there, that's solid. And this stuff is a mixture of fresh fat, and then this is all a mixture of toilet paper and everything. That's a wipe.
As well as the fat and wipes causing so many problems, there are other regular blockages that Rob can't really do much about.
Well, I'm not the Pope and I wouldn't sort of say don't use condoms, but try using maybe a few less. But I don't know what the answer is to that one. I suppose we'll have to live with that. You wonder the size of the people that the condoms have actually been used by, because they're bloody enormous. Might fit Danny. Danny's been up Leicester Square. He's saying he was up there the other week, so, you know, might be one of his down there.
I'll put it in the bin.
That's it. Bin it, don't block it. That's it. Danny's got the motto.
Dealing with the unpleasant contents of the sewers is most people's idea of hell. But to Dan, with only 2 years' experience on the job, life couldn't be better.
It's like a bit of a thrill, isn't it? If you had to think about the job that you do and what you were actually involved in, it will probably turn a lot of people's stomachs. There's not many people get to walk around under the streets of London. There's so much goes on that so many people don't know about.
So, after a detailed assessment of the build-up, Rob now has a plan of action.
That extends for about, I would say, about 30 or 40 metres up the line. It goes right the way through down the embankment. I would imagine there's somewhere in the region of a few tonnes of fat anyway. So basically, we're going to get a jetter in and we'll flush that through.
Rob and Dan can now head back to the surface and make their report. In the coming weeks, a team will be back to lower the flow in the system and flush the build-up away. The career of a grime fighter doesn't always mean working in horrendous conditions. Here in Newcastle, David and Mark spend their day languidly cruising the River Tyne aboard the good ship Clearwater. It's the pride of the Clean Tyne project. The boat is specifically designed for lifting all manner of debris and rubbish out of the river. For David, the job is everything he wanted.
It's a dream job for me, like, because I used to live on the river further down South Shields, and when I was a kid, I used to play on the river, and being young, it was always a dream to work on the river, and it's come true.
Mark is also grateful for the life the job has given him.
I've been on the river all my life, and it's just it's one of them jobs. When I seen it, I had to advertise it, and I would have cried, I think, if I hadn't got it.
Their haul is normally made up of tree trunks, old fridges and traffic cones. But that's not all.
We've had a sheep, we've had a pig, you know, pretty disgusting, like, really smell. You've got to really have strong guts, like, for the job when you get things like that, you know.
Even after light rains, the river this morning still offers up a steady stream of debris.
We've got a tree here, small tree. There's plenty of these in the river, like.
These smaller branches are common, but after storms, they can get an awful lot bigger, and David's got the pictures to prove it.
That's where the wall of floods in September. I bet you that must have been about a ton, maybe, Mark, 2.5 maybe.
The weather may not always be this forgiving, but David and Mark are making the best of the calm conditions, stopping ashore at certain hot spots where, due to the current, huge amounts of rubbish regularly collects.
You see the variety of stuff that we'll get with plastics and that, you know, road going, baskets, everything.
On the Tyne, there's still a constant flow of rubbish, but it was far worse 10 years ago.
We get like a skip and a half or 2 skips a day. Yes, it's still one of the cleanest rivers, like, you know, in Britain.
The water is now so clean that in 2001, the Tyne recorded the highest salmon catch by anglers in the whole of England, with over 2,000 salmon caught from its waters. And this makes Mark very proud.
I've been on a river all my life, and I've seen the river progress from being the way it was years ago to where it is now. So it gives us a little bit of sense of pride, and I'm helping to make the river the way it is.
So with the skip full, Mark and David can head back and unload their haul. A satisfying end to another perfect day tootling about on the Tyne. Since the filming of the programme, the burnt-out block in Leicester still awaits demolition. Sadly for Lou, litter picker Simon has returned to a career as an architect, and the blockages in the sewers were quickly washed away by the flusher teams. In Enfield, North London, extreme cleaner Nick has been called to a private flat.
At the moment, we're unsure exactly what is behind these doors, but we do know the RSPCA have been here and taken cats away. The guess is it's going to be in quite a bad state.
Nick doesn't have to look for any clues. The problems are obvious.
Well, yeah, it's quite an odour in here, let's put it that way. Floor space is limited as well, because there's quite a lot of, well, vodka bottles, to be fair. I think this person who lived here has been a bit of a drinker.
Nick has to quote a price for cleaning and clearing the flat now that the tenant has been evicted. Whoever lived here clearly liked to drink and was very partial to cats, lots and lots of them.
The first thing I'm pointing out here is the bath, which is absolutely horrendous. It is absolutely chock-a-block with cat faeces. That is pretty horrendous. You've got cat mess all around the floor. How someone could live like this, I do not know. Probably have to drink a lot of vodka to be in this place anyway.
The living room isn't much fun either.
There again, vodka bottles, more cat mess, infestation of flies here. This is really bad. I mean, that is gross. All of this is going to have to be cleared. It's a big job, this one. It's not a big flat, but this is a big job.
And then there's the bedroom, and finally the kitchen.
It's a little bit cruel on the animals, looking at that respect as well. We've got a pretty grimy fridge. I mean, there's things living in this fridge.
This flat tells a depressing story, but Nick is determined to give it a happy ending.
It's quite rewarding when you've actually done something good. Something good's come out of this, you know, in the end. And then hopefully someone, a family or an individual can come back here and live a normal life in a normal environment. That's the idea.
But cleaning up all this is going to be pricey.
It's not going to be a cheap job, and it's not going to be a quick job, but it's got to be done properly. Because eventually someone can live back in here, but it's going to be a bit of time before they can even consider coming back in here.
Nick will now work out the cost of the job and hope the owner will agree the contract. It's 9 a.m. in Grimsby, and Enforcement Officer John, known as the Sheriff of Grimsby, has a giant-sized problem to deal with in a local car park. But nothing phases our John.
The problem we're here to deal with is this behind me, a metal storage container. We've known about it for some time. We've spoken to the alleged owner or keeper of it. It is in a public right-of-way. My job today, unfortunately, is to remove it to a correct storage location.
Just get rid of it is John's first thought, but it's not that simple.
What we've got to do is break into it because I'm not able to permit, obviously, the carrying of anything hazardous. So we're just about to get the contract to cut the locks, and then we'll see what's inside and take the appropriate action.
This is definitely not a case of hey presto.
We check the locks out. We now find that it's got a central lock that is pretty substantial.
It's going to take some getting in. But I'm sure you got it sorted, haven't you, John?
We're just waiting for the correct equipment to come up, which will be here in the next 5 or 10 minutes, and we'll cut the lock, and then we can see what we're dealing with.
The delay attracts those with time on their hands.
Now go away.
John decides to give those responsible for the container a final warning.
No, it doesn't appear that anyone's home at the moment.
It's a futile attempt, and John knows the local mood is against him. This could get rather tricky.
Well, I think that's the sad way that society seems to have gone, but hopefully, not just me, but many people like me, we plough on, we go on, we strive to hopefully someday restore some form of order.
John is heavily outnumbered. The Sheriff of Grimsby calls for a posse. When it looked as if a key wasn't necessary, it appears. But then, another problem.
It can't actually be moved in its current condition because there's an extremely strong smell of petroleum spirit. Certainly there are flammable materials in there mixed with flammable substances. I'm surprised that it's not already burst into flames of its own accord, to be honest, because there is the right mixture in there to cause that.
The fire brigade will have to make sure it's safe. But that will take time, and the mood of the crowd isn't improving. John still doesn't know if the contents are dangerous. In Enfield, the owner of the one-bed flat has accepted Nick's quote, so he can start the work immediately. It's good news for Nick, but he doesn't have to do the work. That's for Steve, Bertram and Dave. Bertram is not impressed.
Now we're getting to see the full view of it, and it is really outstanding mucky.
The flat was home to a multitude of cats, so Steve must take precautions before the boys can start the clear-up.
Just spraying in case any fleas in here. Cats, dogs cause fleas and that, so you can never be too careful.
Bertram's found some unwelcome visitors in the bedroom.
Bed bug, they go inside your clothes, go home with you, inside your bed, so the first thing you have to do is kill them.
It may seem a tough way to earn a living, but not for Bertram.
I look forward to all this type of job. That's a job really I specialize in most of all, because I enjoy doing it, going inside, see something like this, get to read all the bugs, and look forward to do many more.
While Brian starts to clear the hoard of vodka bottles, Steve tries to work up an appetite.
Steve getting that sandwich for his lunch in the fridge for about 2 years.
It's my favourite sandwich, chicken and stuffing. Can't beat this, with a bit of meal.
Bertram soon finishes spraying.
So now I think the place is sanitized and good for us to go on do our job.
Now the boys can get stuck in. Steve's wasting no time in the kitchen.
The dirtier the job, the better. The smellier, the better, trust me. There's not many people really want to do the dirty jobs, but some of us just don't mind it. Like the stench coming off some of these, you know, rotten food, meat, it's good for you.
Despite the disappointing sandwich, Steve is still on the lookout.
Not too bad, not too bad. Oh, you got the chicken. Now that smells, that is a bit bad one. Chicken breast with creamy wild mushroom. There's a little party goer.
Spraying is the easy bit. Bertram's now got to get to grips with the problem.
It's a bit shocking when you first get to it. And when you see it, you don't know where to start. Should I start here or there? But finally you have to just get down and start somewhere.
Steve is never one to balk at a challenge, but it can still be distressing.
Like, the fact people can actually live like this and there's nobody out there to help them, yeah, it does shock us. But there's always people like us around to clean up after them.
The kitchen is much improved, but it's been a long day. The boys can now head off, but they'll be back tomorrow to deal with the delights of the bathroom. Deep in the English countryside, the grand interiors of National Trust properties seem a world away from an extreme clean in Enfield. But the lavish and highly valuable furnishings can pose problems of their own. The National Trust also has to preserve priceless collections of books. This afternoon at Stourhead in Wiltshire, book restorer Caroline is giving a masterclass on how to clean and care for these treasured possessions.
I was always the librarian at school for some reason, and I think that I've always enjoyed reading. I think the practical nature of my craft and working with books was something that came together very nicely for me.
Caroline's main concern is dust, and she has an ingenious way of dealing with it.
So I need to turn the vacuum cleaner on. We try and contain the dirt so that we're not spreading it over the collection. And I'm using a pony hair brush, which is soft enough not to cause abrasion, but it's actually very powerful and removes the dirt very successfully.
Cleaning books is a special skill.
I hold the book down into this very basic dusting box and brush from the spine towards the foredge of the book. And then I brush down the foredge and then along the tail of the book. And then I brush the boards and then the spine of the book. This one has got raised bands on it, so I will have to brush this one going across the spine because the dust collects on the raised bands.
And it's not only dust that can do the damage.
We have a range of insects that eat books. We have deathwatch beetle, furniture beetle, carpet beetle, spider beetles, moths and silverfish are the ones that really cause damage. Occasionally also we get rodent damage, but very often the rodent damage is like the sort of contour lines on a map, and we can see on this book where the paper's been eaten away to make a nest.
But we all know what the real problem is: bookworms.
I suppose the bug that everybody thinks of being in books is the bookworm, which there isn't such a thing in the insect kingdom, but it's the furniture beetle larvae, the woodworm, that tends to burrow through the book. Its larger cousin, the deathwatch beetle, also creates rather large holes in books, but the general insect that people think of as eating books is the woodworm.
Coming up, Caroline puts her students through their paces, John summons the fire brigade, Steve's back to tackle the bathroom, and Litter Picker Lou, well, deals with litter. Throughout the country, an army of professionals are continuing to dedicate their daily lives to waging war on the nation's grime. In Enfield, North London, extreme cleaner Steve and his team have returned to tackle the one-bed flat. That's if only they can get in.
Well, it's not opening.
They press on regardless.
We've got to deep clean the whole house. The only room we've got left to do is the bathroom, which is full of cat's feces, and I'm not really looking forward to that.
Eventually, Steve makes it.
Cheers, mate. Thank you very much.
But that's just the start of his problems.
As you can see in the bath, full of cat's feces, damp clothes. Obviously, to keep the cat comfortable while it's having its feces in the bath. It's a dirty job. Somebody's got to do it.
Even for a veteran like Steve, there's something unusual about this case.
First time I've actually seen that much cat's feces in a bath. I've seen a little dollop now and again, but never that much. There's no reason whatsoever on earth why people live like this for. She definitely wasn't using this bath, I can tell you that now.
Steve's not put off by a little local difficulty.
Like, once we finish cleaning this out, somebody will be able to walk in, run the water and just have a bath straight away without doing anything. And to me, that's good.
The bulk of the loose stuff has now been collected, so Steve can plan the deep clean.
Just use a scraper or green pad, scour, spray it, scrub it. It'll come off, no problems there.
What's needed for a job like this is a very careful, disciplined approach.
I could be here all day trying to scrub it off. So the best thing is one of these, which is really a window scraper. so it shouldn't mark the bath at all.
While Steve is kept busy, the others can continue with the rest of the flat. Within half an hour, the bathroom has been transformed.
Look at the difference in this. Yeah, it makes you proud, doesn't it? But it's a pity about the floor. I don't know what they're going to do with that. They'll have to get it buffered up or something somehow, but we've tried our best. You could walk in here now and I could use the toilet. You know what I mean? Well, I wouldn't early on, but I could jump in the bath and have a bath. So if I had my towel, I would anyway. But nah, there's a big difference, mate. Proud I've done it.
The bathroom is stunning. Now it's up to Steve to make the rest of the flat sparkle. In Grimsby, Enforcement Officer John is still trying to remove the giant container. The problem of the missing key has now been solved, but John still has to cope with the added interest his work has brought.
It's nothing like having a really anti-aggressive audience, is there?
There's a strong smell of petrol, so John's called the fire service and they're taking no chances.
It might look as if we're going over the top here with wearing breathing apparatus when the container's outside, but the issue is that it's an actual confined space. So as soon as we open that confined space and we actually enter that confined space, we really need to confirm exactly what air we're breathing. We haven't got a clue what's in there.
Prepared for the worst, the firefighters take a look. The container is filled with a collection of motorbikes and garage equipment, but it seems there's no real danger.
Their findings inside the trailer was that yes, there are strong odours, yes, there's flammable liquid present, but not at a level that it's triggered their explosive meters.
The mood quickly changes. The crowd, who had got John a bit worried, now help by moving the contents of the container to a nearby garage.
The whole tone in the area has totally changed now. It's almost become carnival-like. Once it's emptied, it'll be put back on the back of the truck and it'll be taken away, and we've restored things to how they should be.
It took 6 hours longer than expected, but at last a lorry can pick up the container and take it away. At Stourhead in Wiltshire, the volunteer book cleaners are deep into their second day, and it's time for the course leader Caroline to set them a test.
Where do I start the brush strokes from, remember?
From back to front, I think.
Absolutely right. So far, 10 out of 10.
Every book, and in many cases every page, has to be dusted and inspected. Every single blemish has to be noted.
We found some worm damage here, where the worm has come in. It has also got a little hole there, probably where he did enter the book, and it goes all the way through the book. There's a neat little hole.
They can see if the insect damage has got any worse over time, and if necessary, the books can be treated.
Bottom of the backboard, there's damage there as well.
Reading all these books would take long enough, but cleaning them takes even longer.
Roughly about every 3 to 4 years, the whole library will have to be cleaned, which does take... It took us nearly 18 months last time to do the complete library.
These volunteers love the work.
This book was published in 1750. They've got some originals of Thomas Hardy here. It's respect, you feel great respect about it. Well, I do anyway.
I suppose it's always been a bit of an obsession, and this is brilliant. It's almost heaven for me to see a library like this. And, you know, I feel that what we're doing is really worthwhile, very valuable. I think it's an honour, I really do.
Never judge a book by its cover. In Enfield, Steve and the boys are putting the finishing touches to the deep clean. The manager has some thoughts at half-time.
Good team effort today, definitely good team effort.
While Steve has dealt with the bathroom, James has been sorting out the kitchen.
How's it going, James?
It's going good, mate.
Wicked. That's what I like to hear, mate. That's what I like to hear.
Getting up to the standard it should be, you know. Can't get it 100%, but we'll get it maybe 95. 95 is next to 100, so should be okay.
And it's going to be hard to get the floor 100%.
This is off the cat's faces and all that, stuck to the wood and every other bits and bobs that was in here, so we've got to scrape it up
After a few hours of hard graft, they've got a result.
If you look at the state of this place, how clean it is compared to when we first came in, and I tell you what, I'd move in here tomorrow myself. That's how good I think this place is. It's all clean, immaculate, floors done, walls, windows, everything's done. So, in my eyes, this is a job done.
Rubbish.
It's a familiar hunting ground.
Let's lock this van up round here, set the immobiliser. We don't want to lose the van.
While new partners Gary and Sam clear up the surrounding area, Lou shows his feelings.
Somebody could have paid somebody to move this from miles away, and somebody's drove down here, the dead of night, and tipped it to you. What do? You just move it.
Gary is learning that Lou's anger is almost always justified.
You can't expect the kids to throw used bins, because I mean, when you see some of the parents, you know, them like throwing all the rubbish all over the floor. As the kids get older, I think they can do the same. That's the reason why we've got this problem now.
And Sam is keen to join in.
You can never win it around here. You know, you clean up, and a few days after, you're just as back to normal. Obviously, they don't care. They don't care how they leave. You know, because if they did care, they wouldn't live in such a mess all the time.
Back at the sharp end, things aren't improving.
It's a right mess, so I'm going to have it on the back of this wagon because that's my job. Yeah, I'm just a proud old litter picker from Wolverhampton, just having a bit of fun.
Lou has a real thing about cheap black bags.
They're very thin, inferior bags. Plus, if there's food in there, you'll get magpies, crows, foxes, badgers, hedgehogs, and the one I haven't mentioned is the worst one of the lot, rats. You'll get people ring up, there's rats by my house. Why have I got rats? They should come to the back doors and look in the back passage. I'll know why they've got rats then.
Lou has seen enough rubbish to last a lifetime.
Hopefully, in the future, people will recycle. You'll get a tin of Tango like that. That's aluminium. That could go to the scrapyard and be melted down. And next week, it's foil. And that's wrapped round your chicken. Then you chuck your foil in the bin. Not like these people. They chuck the can on the road. But I'm here, I pick it up, that's my job.
Even on days like this, Lou has some sunny moments.
Never in 1,000 years would I think, well, I'm going to clear rubbish off the street, and this is what I'm doing. And do you know, I enjoy it. Do you know why? Because we're fighting the grime, that's what it's all about. And one day, hopefully, in the future, when I'm retired, there'll be no grime.
With the whole area cleared, Lou and the boys can call it a day.
I'm happy with today. I've time for knocking off now. See you all, me old muckers.
Since the filming of the show, Steve's work on the flat was good enough to attract a new tenant. John's finally seen the back of that great big container, and Lou's heading home to try to forget all about litter. The diligent work of clean-up teams is usually welcomed by the general public. But here on the front line in the suburbs of Newcastle, Environmental Enforcement Officer Tracy and her partners Debs and Vicky are being given a hard time. It's when the conditions of people's own homes is brought into question that trouble can flare up. It's then that the duty of the council to maintain public health isn't fully appreciated. For their own safety, Tracy and her team frequently have to ask the police to accompany them on their rounds. But she's become used to the dangers of the verbal and physical abuse her and her team often receive.
You just sort of take it on the chin, really, you know, it's part and parcel of the job sometimes. Nobody likes being abused or being people being aggressive with them or being intimidated by people, but it's something you just have to risk assess every situation and not put yourself in harm's way. And if you think that the situation's going to get worse, take yourself out of the situation.
First on the agenda today is a resident who Tracy has served notice on to get their flat cleaned up.
So this is D-Day to see if he's complied with the notice that we've served on him, see if he's carried out the work.
Without a warrant, she hopes the man will voluntarily allow her to take a look.
Hiya, just me. If you don't let us in, I'm coming back with a warrant.
With that kind of welcome, there's nothing more Tracy can do, but she'll be back over the coming days with a warrant to force entry. It's not just the daily abuse Tracy has to cope with. There are also some rather disturbing situations.
I think the worst one I've had was a dead St Bernard that had been there for about 6 months and had completely decomposed. The carpet was just a carpet of dead flies. It was only when entry was forced to do a gas safety check that we discovered the conditions.
For her next call, though, she does have a warrant, so whether the resident likes it or not, she'll be able to gain access.
Hello. He's in and he's not happy.
In Leicester, council property manager Steve is dealing with the clean-up problems after negligent tenants have left. He has to work out how to refurbish the property and get it back onto the rental market.
We've got this top floor tower block flat today. I think the previous tenant's been evicted, so we're just going to have a look inside and see what we can find.
He's only just gone through the door when he's hit by the smell from the bathroom.
Quite disgusting in there, to be honest. There's a lot of dog mess on the floor in the bathroom, so it looks like she's had animals. Not allowed within tower blocks, so that's probably one of the reasons why she's no longer here.
Now on to the living area.
This is obviously somebody's living room, but from the state of the sofa and the chairs, I don't know how they've ever been comfortable in here. Bikes everywhere, they've just been doing bike repairs, mobile phones. It's not my idea of a living room, just a collection of rubbish really that you find at a tip. You do wonder how somebody's lived in this property. Well, this is how people live, unfortunately.
Steve has to see flats like this every day, and it does have an effect on his home life.
The way I go on to a girlfriend, I'm always moaning at her about cleaning. It's probably because I see things like this that I get a bit obsessive compulsive at home, and as soon as a bit of dirt or crumb around, I'll be hoovering up around her when she's eating her lunch or stuff.
Refurbishing this flat poses serious problems, not least the fact that it's on the 17th floor.
We might have a problem with that window. We're going to have to try and get that emulsion off. It costs a lot of money to get scaffolding up here to replace that, so it depends if it's gloss or emulsion, whether it will come off or not. That's going to be a nightmare job for somebody cleaning that.
The final room he looks at is the kitchen.
Graffiti again on the units. We've got some more graffiti on the door there. They obviously didn't have a piece of paper to write it on, so the nearest thing to hand was the door. This will need a new kitchen. The units, by the looks of it, they're beyond repair, so we'll change all the units. New sink, new worktops.
Steve has to get this flat cleared quickly so he can start the refurbishment as soon as possible. Prospective tenants are already queuing up, so once again he's going to call on the services of Suicide Sid and his A-team. Sid acquired his nickname because of the zealous way in which he clears properties. Suicide and the boys can empty a 3-bedroom house in around 30 minutes. So this place should be a bit of a doddle. In Newcastle, Enforcement Officer Tracy is continuing to take residents to task over the way they live their lives. On this call, she's working with Vicky. They're visiting a man who has so far refused to clear mountains of rubbish from his house.
Well, basically this is a property we've been at before, where the fire service have rang in and there's a fire risk. It's so cluttered that if that property catches alight, obviously it's a terrace property, so all the other properties may catch fire as well. We've had problems in the past getting access, so we've actually obtained a warrant from the Magistrates Court to force entry if needs be. So we've brought the joiner with us to try and get in with as little damage as possible. And we're just waiting for the police because there has been threats made by this gentleman in the past to members of staff.
Before long, the police arrive.
He's in and he's not happy.
Tracy can now try to get in. This time, the man is cooperative. They won't have to force the door. They don't need the carpenter.
Come on, in. All right, okay. Vicky, Laura.
Once inside, Tracy's worst fears are realised. It seems the man has made little effort to clear away any of the clutter which is piled chest high in all of the rooms. He can hardly get to his bed or to the bathroom. This place is undoubtedly a fire hazard, as well as a potential breeding ground for vermin. Tracy needs to take action.
Okay, so obviously that you haven't done what we've asked.
I've tried, I've got stuff away, I've got stuff bagged ready for Friday.
You still haven't complied with the notice that we've given you. Like Vicky says,
I cannot do everything at once. You know too much and you shouldn't know anything.
At the end of the day, you haven't done what we've asked. You've had this since February to deal with. You haven't done it, so we're going to bring contractors in who are going to do it, which will involve getting rid of anything in here that we deem needs to be gotten rid of.
As far as Tracy is concerned, she's seen and heard quite enough.
Right, that's us, thank you. This was his last chance to prove to us that he was going to do the work that we needed him to do to clear the property. He's just sort of moved things around from room to room. The property is a massive, massive fire risk. The man's a smoker, he likes a drink, and unfortunately that's a massive risk when you're in a terrace property.
The contractors will arrive in the coming weeks, and the man may be charged hundreds of pounds by the council for their services. It's estimated that there are over 60 million rats in Britain. If you're unlucky enough to live near a property that's infested, your own home is likely to be affected too. That's exactly what's happened here in Dagenham in Essex, where Council Pest Controller Pete has been brought in to tackle the problem.
Hello, Pest control. Yeah. All right.
Pete has been battling to control an army of rats invading a resident's home from a vacant house next door. Even with his years of experience, he doesn't understand why there are so many rats.
For some reason, they wanted this house. It's a clean house, it's not a dirty house. I couldn't understand why the rats are moving in here quickly. I've had 28 rats out of this property so far.
Because of the rats, Roy's family's life has been ruined.
The rats have literally chewed through everything. As you can see, the house is clean. We're living next door to a slum. My partner, she's off work through stress. Her daughter has literally moved out. She doesn't want to be here no more because she doesn't know what's going to come out the cupboard. Everyone has their castle to live in, and it's just wrong.
The rats are attracted to the kitchen. They come down from the loft through the cavity walls to seek warmth and food. Pete focuses his attention on the space under the kitchen units.
All my bait bags and everyone has been chewed through, as you can see. They've chewed all the bait through the bag and took the bait out.
There are many possible ways to solve the problem. Pest Controller Pete needs to be a bit of a detective.
The reason why I've got it on string is because whatever way the string goes on all the baits, it gives me a good identification what way we're going to find the rats and where they're coming in from and where they're leaving from.
For Pete, it's sometimes a case of the more, the merrier.
If there's 1 and 2 rats in the house, it is a nightmare to try and catch them, really is. But when you've got baits like this being eaten every day, and I've done 15 bags of bait in this house, and that's a lot of bait, there's a lot of rats because they're competing for the food. So where they're competing, it's making my job easier to catch the rats because I'm poisoning them quick, bang, 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 and using traps as well.
Pete is going to have to use all his experience to stay one step ahead of the rats. For Roy and his family, they must be eradicated. Coming up, Suicide Sid and the A-Team clear the top floor flat in the only way they know how. Tracy challenges another tenant, and Pete reckons he's winning the battle. Throughout the country, an army of professionals are continuing to dedicate their daily lives to waging war on the nation's crime. In Leicester, Council Property Manager Steve has called on Suicide Sid and his A-Team to pull out all the stops. Suicide and the boys can empty the contents of a family house in 30 minutes. But this one-bed flat is on the 17th floor, and everything has to come down via the lifts.
You're limited spaces on the lift. You know what I mean? You can't bring anything downstairs because it's a fire hazard. And with Dave coming inside the lift, and you can't get so much in it, can you?
They've used these ones before, and that doesn't inspire confidence.
I hope the lift don't get stuck. It does break down very often.
This one does, doesn't it?
But this time, hey-ho, the lift is working, and they can make a quick start. First, they remove the council's protective door.
The bins have got to come in and out, and also the chairs and the sofas have also got to come out this way, so we can't get them out with this on, so it's got to come off.
Once the door is off, the problems are exposed. Sadly, they've seen this all too often.
I would say this is about the average.
That's
for a
an
bad
average,
flat.
yeah, for a bad flat.
After years in the job, Sid is still baffled as to why people do this.
I don't understand how people can live like this, really. Apparently she was an alcoholic. I mean, looked at it, you'd think it was a boys' flat, wouldn't you? With all the push bikes and that, but you wouldn't believe it, it's a woman lived here. Maybe she had a fetish for bikes, I don't know. Makes you wonder where she sat and slept. There's no bed in here or anything.
As always, it's the big stuff first, so the boys grab the sofa, or what's left of it.
What do you add to this then? You got some use out of this, didn't you? But there again, it's alcoholics, isn't it? They don't spend money on furniture or anything, they just drink all the time, isn't it? You know what I mean? So they'll just put their head down anyway, wouldn't they, really?
Usually the fridge in these properties is horrible, but amazingly, Sid doesn't have to hold his breath.
It's not bad, actually.
With the big items cleared, the boys are making good progress, and there's time for a spot of reminiscence.
You just don't know what you're going to come up against. You know what I mean? Some places you could come to an house or a flat, and it's immaculate. When I say immaculate, you could walk in there and actually live in the places, you know what I mean? But then some places you get like this. I mean, we went to a flat the other week. The bloke had put all brand new carpets down and never moved in. And we've just gone there, took all the carpets away and just crushed them all. Pointless, isn't it? This house we've done. And we found these photos of a woman in bondage. And a couple of weeks later, Dave went to the co-op and actually bumped into the woman, didn't you?
Yeah, in queue. I can't say too much because my wife will with me. But I did say I recognise you.
Yeah, with no clothes on.
Things seem to have been going rather well. But then there's the bathroom.
As you can see, as you walk in, it looks like the dog's been living here. Been there a few days actually, because it's dry, look. It's quite rock hard. Doesn't look like she used the bath or anything, does it? It looks like the dog's been using it. Caution wet floors, cleaning in progress. Is that what she calls cleaning? How's about that then?
Thanks to the boys' hard work, the flat's looking a whole lot better. But will property manager Steve agree? In Newcastle, Enforcement Officer Tracy and her team have been called to a flat where a council tenant is believed to be living in horrible conditions.
It's a property where we've had reports that the bath, the toilet and the wash-hand basin's full of faeces. We've noticed it when the block flooded over the weekend.
There's no answer. Tracy's colleague Brian isn't going to be put off.
Hello, it's the housing office. Can you open the door, please?
It was worth the effort.
Hiya, my name's Tracy McCann. You got the notice. Can we come in and have a look around, please? Thank you.
Tracy heads for the bathroom.
The main problem's with the bathroom. Where's your bathroom?
Fortunately, the contents of the bath have been removed.
Well, the report was that the bath and the sink and everything was full of faeces, and it's not.
But the lavatory is in a pretty poor state, and the floor needs cleaning. The improvement is welcome, but Tracy still has to evaluate the condition of the rest of the property. There seems to be some confusion over whether the man wishes to continue living here or whether he wants to leave.
Do you live here? Is this your main residence? Yes. What sort of notice? Notice to quit?
Notice of termination.
If you haven't terminated by the end of today, then I'm going to serve a legal notice on you to get the work done in this flat, to put it right, to get that toilet cleared.
If the man does go, the flat will have to be cleared at the council's expense. If he stays, he will have to pay for the repairs. Tracy leaves the man to decide what he wants to do. Her colleague Brian has found out how the bathroom might have been cleared.
Brian has just said there when the technical lads went in on Monday, he was actually scooping the faeces out of the bath with a pan. I have no idea where it has gone, but yeah, it was a much nicer scene than I expected when I went in.
The tenant has until this afternoon to decide whether to stay or go. In Dagenham, pest controller Pete is continuing to check the bait and traps he's laid in a house to cope with a serious infestation of rats. They're coming from a derelict house next door. As he looks under the units in the kitchen, it's Geronimo.
There you go. It's one of our culprits. This rat's been caught for about an hour, hour and a half, roughly. By how soft it is, there's no rigor mortis setting.
Pete has to know everything about the lifestyle of the rats. It's a case of know your enemy.
This one's a male. You will hear the males rucking and fighting and scrabbling over the food. The females won't. They just tend to want to be in a group and eat the food together and share it. Males are sort of ruck and hear that squeaking sort of noise all the time, which we have heard in here when I've actually put the bait in.
Pete learns from the way the rat died how it lived.
When you catch them around the head like this one, it's telling me basically that there was more than one rat running along here on the food. 9 out of 10 a rat will use its tail and try and flick the bait literally off the trap, and then if it gets caught on the trap with its tail, the actual tail part, sectioned from roughly about here, will come apart, they will actually come off. It's like a lizard. When it gets caught or you pick a lizard by its tail comes off. Exactly the same with a rat. The rat does the same, and that's how he gets away.
Pete's won a small battle today, but the war is far from over. Homeowner Roy is still upset because it wasn't his fault.
You tell people, they say, oh, what's happening? Oh, we've got rats in our house. The first thing they think is, oh, another dirty family. They don't see what we have to live with. We keep our house tidy. We spent a lot of money doing how we want to do it, how we want to live. And through someone's negligence, our house is ruined. We try our hardest to keep our own area clear. We sweep the front out. Our dog goes to the toilet in the garden. It's picked up so we don't upset our neighbours. And it just ruined our lives.
After rebaiting and resetting the traps, Pete can call it a day. He'll be back tomorrow to check the traps yet again. In Newcastle, Environmental Enforcement Officer Tracy has moved on to deal with illegally dumped rubbish. For her last call of the day, she's joined by her regular partner, Debs. They can't resist rummaging through some discarded black bags in an alleyway.
This was a complaint that's coming from a local resident, so we're just going to have a look through, see if we can identify where these bags have come from.
Tracy and Debs are trying to find out who's responsible, so they can caution or even prosecute the offender. Some people leave all sorts of personal information around.
It's a bank account paying-in receipt with a sort code, account number, 80 quid paid in.
It's unreal, the sort of things you come across. Checkbooks, bank cards, full bank statements with full bank details on. Should somebody come along with intentions that were not entirely positive, then it would mean that, you know, they would have access to a lot of information, people's personal information, which I'm sure, you know, they could make use of.
Inside every bin bag, there's always the prospect of an unpleasant surprise.
Carefully don't stand in that bag beside you because I think it's a dead animal. I can see guts.
You can see guts? I think it's a dead bird. It doesn't smell good, let's put it that way. I enjoy my job, but sometimes there's parts of it that aren't so nice.
The bank account details should lead them to the culprit. They'll send out a cautionary letter, and if that doesn't work, the offender could be prosecuted for fly tipping. In Leicester, Suicide Sid and his A-team have made short shrift of clearing the 17th floor flat. But they've still got to put back the protective door to stop any intruders.
We're just basically now, we're just locking up and just sweeping up on the way out to the lift. Just take the last of the bins down there and just lock up.
Sid is resigned to the fact he'll be back here again.
We do go to an house, twice, 3 times a year sometimes. Why you want to move in for a couple of days or a couple of weeks, then like you move back out again. Plus you're leaving all your furniture what you brought in. I mean, there's people out there who ain't got nothing, absolutely nothing. And yet these people can just walk in an house, fill it with all their furniture, and just walk out in a couple of months and leave it all. Then send someone else in and do the same again. We'll be back again.
But Sid's always got Dave to keep his spirits up.
You know what they say about fat guys, don't you? They may have small ones, but look at the weight pushing at home.
This is tough work for tough men. But there are problems.
No, I've done one of my nails.
Since we filmed, the man with the mountain of rubbish did all and more than was asked to remove what had become a serious fire risk. The tenant, given the chance to stay or go, decided to leave. The flat will soon be back on the rental register. In Leicester, the property on the 17th floor was soon re-let. In Dagenham, the score was 45 dead rats to 0, and Pete is determined there's going to be no replay. We start in Leicester. Council property manager Steve is beginning his regular shift. His department is responsible for the upkeep of the 21,000 council homes in the city. Properties have to be returned to the rental market as soon as possible after a resident has either died, moved on or been evicted. Steve routinely sees over 20 properties a week. This terrace house is top of today's agenda.
We've just come to this property, we've been handed the keys in. We're not sure what we're going to find inside. I think the previous tenant passed away, so I'm not sure whether it's been cleared out or anything yet, but we'll have a look inside.
When there's been a death in a property, Steve is always rather apprehensive.
Every time you come into a property, really, you know that somebody's passed away, or you hear that somebody's passed away. It's kind of worrying because you don't know what you're going to find.
Steve has learnt over the years not to delve too deeply, unless it's absolutely necessary.
Don't open fridges. I did it once when I first started, and it's the last time I'll ever do it.
He may be able to avoid the fridge, but he can't help noticing the state of the carpet.
I'm not really sure what this is down here, but your feet kind of stick to it, so it's some kind of bodily fluids. Hopefully it's all just in the carpet, it's not seeped through into the floor below.
This may be where the old woman died, but as Steve ventures upstairs, the carpets continue to reveal a grisly tale.
There's a bit more of a stain on the carpet here, coming from the bathroom. It's obviously human faeces by the looks of it. It's quite sad really to think that the person's been, by the looks of it, left here on their own, struggling to get by. Obviously needed some help. Whether she was getting that help or not, I can't really say, but from the looks of the carpet here and downstairs, probably wasn't getting as much help as they needed. It's not going to be very nice for lads to clear that up.
Steve hopes that the state of the carpets are the only disturbing discovery as he continues his assessment. It's not only Britain's towns and cities that require the constant attention of our clean-up teams. For the Environment Agency, keeping our river systems and waterways clear of all manner of rubbish, however large, can pose a serious problem. Today, Al from the Environment Agency, supported by Constable Mark Rodham and his police underwater unit, are mounting a joint operation on the River Thames, near Pangbourne. They're attempting to retrieve a stolen BMW car that, thanks to joyriders, has ended up in the middle of the river.
Some of the guys were dealing with an accident or some stolen vehicle in the lay-by just next to us here. They just happened to be looking out of the water when they dealt with that, and they saw something didn't look right. It was sort of ripples in the water, and they thought there's something underneath there. So what we did, a few weeks after that, we decided to go and investigate, and we just dived on here and we found the car. So, you know, it was a bit of luck really.
With a bright summer day attracting traffic on the river, Al's main concern is to ensure the safety of the operation.
People aren't aware of what a very clear instruction such as stop means.
Now the coast is clear, armed with a tug, a barge-mounted crane and a team of divers, Mark can mobilise his forces.
We'll get these tugs in position, we'll drop the buoy in, and the divers will then connect the shackles through the vehicle, then hopefully they'll be able to lift it with this the crane on the end here.
The crane is in position so the divers can safely venture into the river and attach the car. But this is going to be the start of a somewhat tricky day. In Leicester, Steve is continuing his tour of the old lady's property. Apart from the carpets, there doesn't seem to be any more unpleasant surprises. But as he looks at the woman's clothes and personal effects, Steve shows his sympathy.
It's just somebody's life all in black bags, basically, and unfortunately we've got to send it all to the tip. We haven't got time to be looking for anything of sentimental value for anyone.
The main problem for Steve is he can't evaluate exactly what needs to be refurbished or replaced until all the furniture, carpets and rubbish is cleared from the property. But Steve has the ultimate weapon to deal with the problem: Suicide Sid and his crushing crew. He has his own very special style for clearing a house fast, and you could risk certain death if you're standing at the bottom of the stairs. With this approach, Suicide and his A-team can clear a fully furnished house in about 30 minutes, but woe betide anyone who gets in their way.
All right, Sid, do you want to come round then? All right, see you in a minute.
Steve has a few minutes of calm before the storm that is Suicide Sid. In East London, Dagenham sewage team Simon and Bill are starting the day dealing with a blocked drain which has flooded a car park.
You'd be surprised what you find in the drain, as you'll see in a minute.
The gully motor starts to draw off the standing water so the boys can clear whatever's blocking the drain. The job seems pretty stress-free. If only the same could be said for their working relationship.
Here he goes again, he's on the phone.
Hello?
Bill is not at all happy with the frequency of what appears to be Simon's urgent work calls. They seem to come only when the job is demanding, but Simon will have none of that.
Which one would you like?
Yeah, and what?
Because I'm the lazy, so they have to answer these three.
Well, could I have the personal one?
With the water drawn off, Bill, or even Simon, can start the dirty work of emptying the drain of its contents.
Well, don't you just stand there giving out your orders, fatty.
This
Have a
is
bash.
what I'm doing. I'm the brains of the outfit.
Before long, the drain reveals its secrets. Loads of metal piping that have been blocking the flow. Now, all that's left to do is to flush the system.
Right, we're now going to check the run to see if we can get it to run. If not, it's going to need further investigation.
And that's a big word for you. Investigation.
In a minute, I'm going to swing this thing and it's going to hit him
That's a big
straight
word
in the
for the
head.
college boy.
Bill enjoys ribbing Simon. He still finds himself at the sharp end, but that could be a blessing.
As you can see, my new hat and my visor, it's got earmuffs on. You know why? So I can't hear him talking.
I'll just be here if you want me, all right?
Yeah, you stay there.
Yeah, I'll just be here.
Don't get involved in something you can't handle.
I'll just be here, I won't do anything. Go on.
Yeah, you stay there, because you're useless. We're going to blast it now, see if it runs. And hopefully, it should run.
After a few seconds of blasting, it seems they've freed the blockage.
And as you can see, it's done. It's running away now, so it's a job done well.
Elated, but feeling slightly guilty about his behaviour, Bill tries for a bit of reconciliation.
Kiss, kiss. Oh, as you would say no yesterday.
Perhaps it could be better to leave it till later. On the Thames, the police divers have successfully secured the sunken BMW to the crane. But as the car breaks the surface, Mark can't afford to relax.
If the car's been in the water for some considerable time, it gets filled up with silt and it makes it very, very heavy. So this has only got a limit, I think it's a 1 ton weight on this. It's on its limits, particularly if it's a BMW, it's quite a big car as well.
Slowly but surely, the car is gently towed as close to the bank as possible. Now safely away from the main current, Al can take over the operation and deal with the challenge of getting the car onto dry land.
Got the recovery truck here. Yeah. Okay, they're going to get a wire on it, start pulling it out and then try and flip it over onto the wheels. The main concern at the moment is that if there's any oil still in there that's going to start coming out, we need to have mats and booms or whatever we've got on board handy.
As the line from the recovery truck is attached and the winching begins, the good news is that so far there are no obvious signs of oil seeping from the vehicle and polluting the river. The bad news, however, is that this recovery truck can't handle the weight of the BMW.
Yeah, this isn't working. We need to pull in something a lot bigger.
There's nothing for it but for Al to wait for the bigger recovery truck to arrive. However, with the delay, there's more of a risk of the car's oil leaking into the water. Coming up, the BMW makes a last bid for freedom. Suicide Sid does what he does best. Bill and Simon stir up some trouble, and Enforcement Officer John is on the trail of a skip that skipped. Throughout the country, an army of professionals are continuing to dedicate their daily lives to waging war on the nation's grime. In Leicester, at property manager Steve's request, Suicide Sid and his A-team are on another adventure.
And they'll have it cleared out in half hour, 45 minutes, sometimes a bit longer. There's no messing with them. They've only been in there 30 seconds in the first wheelie bin's full already.
This crack team has a vital reason for working so fast.
If we don't get it done, we don't get paid.
Sid can't afford to be squeamish about the state of the carpet. Where there's muck, there's brass.
You didn't take no notice, really. I mean, looking at it, it just looks like dust to me. There's things you get used to it every day. You know what I mean? You see this every day.
And when it comes to mirrors, there's no room for superstition.
Sometimes we get at least four or five a day, and we always break them. I don't get much luck with anything.
It's a sad reality, but there's no time to save anything at all.
Because, I mean, we do most probably 15, 20 properties a week, and it's where we could just pull all that stuff. Basically, we just crush everything.
After 30 minutes of hard graft, the house is cleared, and with the dust settling, there's time to have a cup of tea. And a chance for Dave to explain Sid's nickname.
We call him Suicide Sid. We don't work in the same room as he works. Trouble is, he shouts, "Watch out," but it's down already. So you've just really got to watch him, because if he ain't trying to kill you, he'll be killing himself.
As the boys finish their well-earned break, Steve can start assessing the house. On the River Thames near Pangbourne, the sunken BMW is now resting in the shallows after being lifted from the bottom of the river. Al from the Environment Agency has had to call up a larger recovery truck to haul the car the last few yards onto the bank. While he waits, another unwanted complication has arisen.
Got quite a major leak of engine oil coming out into the river now, which is definitely what I didn't want to happen. So we're just putting down these special absorbent mats. They soak up the oil and they stop it dissipating and spreading further on.
Fortunately for Al, within minutes the new recovery truck arrives. He wants to get the car out of the river as quickly as possible to avoid further pollution. With the car attached to the stronger winch, it looks promising. But nothing can be taken for granted. With the car now safely secured on the bank, the police divers prise the boot open and check the contents. There's nothing untoward inside, and the oil slick in the river has been contained. Al reckons it's all gone rather well.
It's been a very successful day. Very happy with the outcome. Job's good.
The car has been in the river so long, there's no chance of finding any clues to the identity of the joyriders. So the car will now be taken off to be crushed. It's been another successful day in the Environment Agency's never-ending battle to keep our rivers car-free. In Dagenham, sewage clearance team Simon and Bill have moved on to their next job, but unfortunately, their banter hasn't improved.
Should we knock on the lady's door first? No.
They've now swapped the gully motor for their regular sewer van and are back dealing with a more routine task, a blocked domestic drain. On lifting the cover, Simon feels a pang of jealousy.
Some bloke's lucky, isn't he?
Yeah.
There's about 4 condoms in there.
Is there?
Will you stop playing with it?
But for once, Bill is taking the high ground.
Right, what we're going to do now, we're going to check the depth to see which way it's running. The drains go down, you've got the start of the run, which is like that, that's the drain. Then as it goes down, it gets like that. And it opens up further and further. But because she's the beginning of the run, and she's the shallow one, she will get most problems, because if all that's blocked, it all backs up and it'll come out over her garden.
His sensible, technical approach is wasted on Simon.
London Zoo.
Yeah,
I can have you in there. You'll be part of a breeding programme.
Ascertaining where the sewer run is blocked in the row of houses, as always, is proving difficult.
You've got to think on your feet, because 90% of the people are at work when we're meant to be doing sewers. And it's ridiculous. We keep knocking on these people's houses, but we know they're not going to be in because they're all at work.
Simon investigates further. He suddenly admits why he's been on the phone a lot and why he's feeling stressed.
I'm getting married in 3 weeks, and it's costing me a small fortune. She'll appreciate it, marrying such a person like me.
This could also be a happy moment for Bill, but unfortunately, the wedding is to be in Cuba.
Of course he's invited to the wedding, but he hasn't got a passport, because really, we don't know what breed he is yet.
Bill's frustration over his passport problem is something that he doesn't really want to talk about. Back to the job in hand, the boys have 2 options to clear the run.
So what you want to do, rod it?
Can do, or just stick the jet up there.
We'll rod it. Safer. Yeah.
With most of the residents out at work, using the power jetter could be extremely dangerous. It might blast a torrent of sewage through the house. the only option is to use the old-fashioned method of rodding with a plunger. Bill is lit up.
Here we go, babe. I'm just a man, baby.
Do you know how much medication he's on? Do you want to snap them off?
Yeah.
Do you want to snap them off now?
Well, no, I was going to wait and come back tomorrow.
Bill has had to come to terms with the idea that he'll be stuck in England while Simon ties the knot in sunny Cuba. But he's cleared the blockage, and that seems enough to keep him happy for now.
Daddy done it.
And he makes one last attempt to make up. On city streets, environmental enforcement officers like ex-cop John in Wolverhampton work tirelessly to combat the scourge of fly tips and illegally dumped waste. This afternoon, he's been given a tip-off that the contents of a skip has been emptied on a nearby industrial estate.
There was a skip containing that waste in the corner. The skip lorry picked the waste up and just tipped it and drove off, leaving all the waste on the ground.
John reckons one of the companies on the estate has gone bust and not paid for the skip, so the skip owners have cut their losses. For John, that's unacceptable behaviour.
They have deposited it unlawfully. That is fly tipping. Well,
John is determined to find out the whereabouts of the skip company. Fortunately, it doesn't take him long to find someone on the estate who saw exactly what happened.
Did you see the skip being dumped?
Yeah.
Did you?
There were two blokes.
Was there?
Yeah.
And what's the name of the skip company?
MT Skips.
MT. Hang on, I'll go and get my pad out of the car.
Yeah.
If John can prove that this skip company really did commit an offence, there's a possibility of a fine of up to £50,000. So, armed with a company name, a witness, and the chance of a conviction, John can now pay MT Skips a surprise visit.
Have you seen the way they spell it? MT Skips, you fill them, we empty them. Which is MT Skips?
They're here at the minute.
Whereabouts is the unit?
They really got a unit.
Are they? Where they run the skip business from?
On this estate here.
Where is their unit then, please?
There's no unit.
There's no unit, any yard?
Yeah, the yard, yeah.
Where's the entrance to the yard?
Oh, just here.
The man seems to be a bit cagey, and soon the plot thickens.
Are you anything to do with MT Skips?
Yeah. Well, I work for them.
You work for them?
Yeah. Why, what's the matter?
My name's John Eccleston. I'm from an environmental enforcement officer.
Yep.
We've had a skip emptied on one of the industrial estates.
Not
That's
by
right.
MT Skips, you, eh?
Yeah.
Not a chance, unless it's been stolen skip.
What's the gaffer's name?
Michael Enright.
Okay,
No
what's your
problem.
name, sir?
Tim.
Tim?
Enright.
Are you his...
Brother.
You're his brother. Are you co-owner?
No.
He's the owner.
Yep.
So, from not having a clue as to the whereabouts of the company offices, he's now admitting to be the brother of the owner. John has every reason to be increasingly suspicious.
I don't think he's telling the truth now. I don't think he knows. But obviously he's defending his brother. Can't blame him for that. So we'll just have to see what his brother says in the morning.
On John's return the next morning, it begins to look like a case of deliberately mistaken identity. Could Tim Enright be Michael Enright, the owner of the company?
So what's your name, is it?
Michael Enright.
You're Michael Enright,
Yeah.
are you? And you're the owner of MT Skips.
It takes a second for the man's admission to sink in.
Did you tip that skip up and leave it there?
We tipped that one up, yeah.
Did you tip it?
Yeah.
You tipped it
Yeah.
up. Why did you tip it?
It was only 80 quid the skip, including the VAT. And he wouldn't pay for his own rubbish to be removed off the premises.
Right.
So where does that leave you?
Right.
It's a Gordon Brown job, that is. I could do with one of them government bailouts just to move everybody else's rubbish.
Right.
Now that Michael has come clean as to who he actually is, and he admits that he dumped the rubbish, John can move ahead with the prosecution.
I've got to tell you, you needn't
Yep.
say anything, but it may harm your defence
Yep.
if you do not mention, when questioned, something that you later rely
Yeah.
on in court.
No problem.
But even though Michael is for the high jump, he's only too happy now to try and put things right.
I mean, I'll go out and remove the waste now.
If you go and remove all of that lot, I'll put it down as mitigation in the report, to your credit, that you've recognised what you've done and then it's all been gone and you've disposed of it, and you've disposed of it lawfully.
So if Michael actually does go and clean up the rubbish, he won't avoid official action, but he may be treated leniently. Either way, John feels he's got a result.
Fair play to him. He's said, I will go back, I will pick the rubbish up, I will ensure that it is disposed of properly, and I'll put it all in the report, and so let the court decide.
It's up to Michael to keep his word. After filming was over, the BMW was crushed. Steve has re-let the house in Leicester. Because skip boss Michael did clear up the contents of the skip, he was only given a caution. Simon married his beautiful bride Ruth in Cuba, and Bill was left just imagining how wonderful it was. But first, in Leicester, Council Housing Manager Steve arrives for work.
We've just been given the keys for this 3-bedroom house, and let's go and have a look inside, see what we can find.
As usual, it's horrible. It's Steve's job to clear up and refurbish council properties after the tenants have moved out, or in this case, have been evicted. He should now be used to this scene, but it still gets to him.
When you walk into a property and it's left like this, it annoys you really. Obviously when they moved in it was all clean, tidy and cleared out, and then they just leave this mess for us to clear up. It has a knock-on effect to the new tenants that are going to be moving in because they have to wait longer. They will get a bill for it though.
Damage on this scale will cost thousands of pounds to put right. Leicester Council will use all its powers to track down the tenants to make them pay, taking them to court if necessary. But it's the human cost that really annoys Steve.
This is a house, so there's going to be a family waiting to move in, so they'll probably be overcrowded in a flat, maybe homeless. They're in a bad situation where they are desperately in need of this property, but because of how it's been left, there's a massive hold-up for them.
As well as the rubbish and vandalism, Steve has been warned by Pest Control that the house has been infested with rats and fleas. Steve has no option but to call in Suicide Sid and his A-team to clear the house. Suicide, who cares nothing for his own safety, has his special way of clearing a property. Within a few minutes, Suicide arrives with the Yellow Beast. It's going to be an entertaining day.
There's a rat and there's a dirty rat.
In Wolverhampton, the city's proudest litter picker, Lou, is embarking on another shift. Unfortunately for the residents, he's in fine voice.
I'm a litter picker and I don't care. As I'm mousing along like I have a whistle to myself. I can't whistle, I can't sing, but you like to make a bit of row as you go along, just to let people know you're out and about and trying to get their streets nice and clean.
With the sun shining over the suburb of Dunstall and only a smattering of litter to attend to, Lou's allowing himself to feel positive about the future.
I think I'll last till I'm about 93 or older. Just keep plodding on. As long as they keep wanting to pay me, I'll keep coming.
But just around the corner by the local school, things take a turn for the worse.
I've walked up the road thinking, well, it's not too bad at all. Come past this tree and look what greets you. This is unbelievable, this is unbelievable. Bottles, cans, lino, chip boxes. Look, a bag full of bricks. Now, why would anybody come here and bring a bag full of bricks? Hey, they must have got an hernia carrying that here. What a disgrace. There's a bin there, and they've not even put anything in the bin.
It's looking like Lou's day is about to fall apart, and the state of the bin doesn't help.
And what they've done, they put a green bag in here, and the kids have come along and set fire to it.
But amazingly, Lou seems to be regaining some of his composure.
And by the time we leave here, it'll be spick and span, you'll be able to do a bit of camping on here.
In Leicester, Suicide Sid and his partner Ian are preparing to clear the house, togging up to face the worst.
Well, we've been told there's rats in there, fleas, and it's in a bit of a state really.
The white suits may protect against the fleas, but they're not exactly air-conditioned.
These suits don't help. So what? You've got to work at them. You can't breathe in them, can you? It makes you sweat all day.
With a quick spray of flea repellent, the boys can now venture inside.
Once you open the door, you can actually smell what's been living in here. And apparently, like, the kids have been living in this. It smells like a dirty nappy or some old nappies. That's what it really smells like.
Even with the windows open, it's going to be hot work for Ian and Sid. While Ian takes care of the kitchen, Sid works his way down from the top. In the bedroom, it's quickly apparent what else has been keeping the family company.
See where the mice have been living? That's what they do, look. They've been living under the wardrobe, shred it, made themselves a nice bed. To let your kids live like this, it's really unbelievable, really.
Back down in the kitchen, the extent of the infestation is obvious.
Most of this now is all mouse droppings. Imagine the kids have been coming in here, getting a packet of crisps or whatever, getting the food, the man's cooking in here, and that's what they're eating most probably.
The work surfaces are horrible, and Sid's made an even more unpleasant discovery below.
That's a big rat, look. You can see where it's been eaten. Look, see the maggots coming out now, look. They're still alive, look. Oh, it's just rinks that does, man. All right, if you look underneath here, all the maggots, the floor's riddled with them. You look, when you actually look, you catch them all running out through the side of your eyes, and it looks like the actual ground's moving. But it ain't, it's just the maggots are all, basically just everywhere, really. You see this here, look, moving, look. Like, imagine you walk straight in here, and you see that start moving, you're going to get a little bit of a fright, ain't you?
This may seem scary, but Sid's seen much worse.
I mean, I've seen where dead bodies been moved out from a settee, and I've gone to grab the settee and like bigger maggots than that, where obviously it ate the bloke away, off his head apparently, and I moved the cushion, and there was most will be 3 times as much as what I've seen on the floor there. But it's the smell; it does make you swallow a bit. You know what I mean? You do smell death. It's got that certain smell. And when I walked in, I knew something was dead in here.
Having had their progress delayed, the boys will have their work cut out to clear this house today. There's no peace for the wicked. For the nation's pest controllers, for most of the time, it's a land battle against cockroaches, rats and creepy crawlies. But in Cardiff, pest controllers Jason and Kevin are having to face a challenge from the air. From the rooftops, they have to launch a cunning campaign. They don't have any sentimental feelings for their enemy. They're out to trick seagulls.
We're just checking, surveying the area to see how many nests are up here, and if we find any eggs, we're going to replace them with some plastic replacement ones.
Cardiff is second only to Aberdeen in its population of seagulls, with nearly 3,000 pairs nesting around the city. Replacing the gulls' eggs has proved to be the best deterrent against the burgeoning population. It's not just the mess the gulls leave behind, it's the seagulls' antisocial behaviour which really causes trouble.
They do attack people. I say when the actual sort of young hatch, the seagulls get very defensive of the young and they start to swoop down, and you can sort of get members of the public which get attacked. So I say by doing this, it does actually sort of prevent the actual sort of seagulls from actually taking on the aggressive tendencies later on in the year.
It doesn't take Jason long to find the first nest.
Right, we found a nest here now which actually has 1 egg in. So what we're going to do now, we're going to replace it with a plastic replica egg, very similar in size and shape, and we put it down, and then basically when the seagull comes back, it actually doesn't actually understand that actually the actual egg has been taken, and it will just sit on it now for the rest of the summer, and it won't figure this out until actually the nesting season is actually finished then.
Jason blames our throwaway society for the huge escalation in seagull numbers.
We live in a society now which is a fast food society, so there's a ready food source for them. Centre of town these days, you know, being fast food, refuse and litter is easy pickings for them. Chicken bones, things like that, which you often find actually in the nests themselves. So it does tell you that they are scavengers, and they will find food from many different places.
The egg replacement programme is a long-term approach to controlling the seagull population, and the most humane. After 3 years in operation, it's proving to be highly successful.
The actual system we put in place with this egg replacement has worked very well. Mostly it came about because members of the public were being attacked, and by actually replacing the eggs on virtually all of them, the success rate has been quite high and the complaints have dropped dramatically.
As each pair of gulls raises 3 chicks a season on average, Jason and Kevin will pay regular visits to continually replace the newly laid eggs. But despite the cunning plan, it's estimated that in 10 years, Cardiff's gull population will grow to over 5,000 nesting pairs. It will replace Aberdeen as the UK's seagull capital. Coming up, Sid and Ian feel the heat. Lou and the boys sort out the fly tip. Enforcement Officer John cracks down on smokers. And we're out on the night shift, hanging around Westminster Tube Station. Throughout the country, an army of professionals are continuing to dedicate their daily lives to waging war on the nation's grime. In Leicester, Suicide Sid and partner Ian are taking a breather after discovering the unwelcome guest in the 4-bed house. Sid only gets paid on the amount he clears in a day, so it takes a lot for him to halt proceedings.
You start to swallow and you can feel yourself, you want to heave after a time, you know, because of the smell.
Revived, Sid and Ian can continue doing what they do best. But they do sometimes reflect.
I have a bad day every day. That's why I destroy everything. Collapse them all. It's the best way to get a wardrobe down. It took someone hours to pick this up. It takes me about 2 seconds to do it.
For Sid, things aren't as bad as they are for partner Ian. Today is his first day back doing house clearances after 30 years in a desk job at the council.
It's not nice for him, is it, really? I can imagine people didn't live like this 30 years ago. But I mean, if I come on my first job and you're coming into this, you think, oh God, what have I let myself in for? And it must be the hardest day's work he's done in 30 years, I'd say, you know what I mean?
Right, said I would be lost today doing this on my own anyway. I'll be here all day, won't I? And tomorrow. I must admit, it's a bit of a shock to my system really, to see a pattern like this.
Whether it's Ian's lack of experience or the heat, Sid's feeling the strain.
What am I going to be like in like 5-10 years' time? Yeah, I mean, I'm 47 now, I mean, I don't want to be going up in the attics when I'm 55, 60. So I could do with like a 20-year-old, you know what I mean? Let him do all the hard work.
With the bedrooms cleared, all that's left is the attic.
A couple of old tellies, suitcases, half a wardrobe.
It's the perfect excuse for Sid to show his feelings. In Wolverhampton, Litterpicker Lou is mustering his forces to tackle the unsightly fly tip near the local school.
Hey, this is young Gary getting out the cab now. He'll still and do this job. He's the babby of the section. He's YTS, are you? Just finished. Oh, they've took him on full time now, apparently. They've started to pay him. He's absolutely loaded. What do you do with all your money all the while?
Spend it on the house.
He like, spend it on the house and a few cans. That's what he likes.
With everyone present and correct, time to hatch a plan.
My plan of attack at the present moment is I'm just going to pass these few bricks across to Gary and Sam and chuck them in the motor. See how young Gary is, always likes to take more than anybody else.
Like Sid in Leicester, Lou's also feeling his age. But there's life in the old dog yet.
I've come here, I've seen this mess today. I've jumped over this fence, I'm 62. I've still got a bit of a jump in me. People don't seem to realise. They think I'm old and knackered, but I ain't. In about another 10 minutes time, 15 minutes time, it'll be nice and clean. Come 2 weeks time, it'll be as bad again, but why worry?
And there's even time for Lou to pass on some of his experience to the younger members of the team.
Up, pick, in. Down, clip, pick, in. It's so simple. A babby could do that. Well, Gary does it, don't he?
With Gary and Sam making good headway, Lou can take a few moments to admire their work.
Steady on, Gary, watch your bulges, all right. OK. He's happy as a pig in eh, Gary? Look at that.
When Lou's in a good mood, he'll take a pop at anyone, even a passing friend.
Have you left all this rubbish here? We're keeping our eye on you. You look the type. See you, mate. Have a good day. He's off down the road, spend his gyro, I suppose.
As Lou predicted, within about 15 minutes the area is cleared.
Looks nice and tidy. Perhaps the next person that's walking down here with their can suddenly goes to chuck it thinking, oh no, that's nice and clean and tidy. But will they? That's the question. Will they?
It's up to Lou and the thousands like him to clear up the fly tips and rubbish from the streets. But then enforcement officers like John across town in Wolverhampton must take action against people who cause this menace. Today, accompanied by 2 community support officers, John's clamping down on offenders in the city centre.
Today's all about making people aware that dropping litter is a criminal offence. If they're caught dropping litter, that they will be receiving a £60 fixed penalty. If they don't pay a fixed penalty, they will go to court, and we've had many successful prosecutions.
Trying to find the culprits is proving difficult.
It's unusually tidy and it's unusually quiet.
But there's always someone doing something illegal.
Got it. No backplate on a private hire vehicle. It's an offence.
John can now move on to his pet hate, cigarette butts.
This is the problem that you have with cigarette ends. It stinks and we're walking through other people's ashtrays, really. When it rains, they get washed down the drain. The water from the storm drains gets into the watercourse, gets into the reservoir. Are we sort of drinking our water through somebody else's cigarette end? That's a nice thought.
Finding smokers is the easy part, and even though this lad has dropped his cigarette end, he's standing on it. But that's not an offence until he walks away.
The offence is on leaves, he hasn't left it. He's standing on it.
Smoking's not what it used to be. He moves on and John pounces.
Excuse me, mate, can you just come this way, man? My name's John Eccleston. I'm a enforcement officer of the council. I've just observed you drop a cigarette end onto the floor. You will be receiving £60 fixed penalty. Do you understand?
Yeah. He seems rather relaxed about receiving a £60 fine, but others aren't so accommodating.
£60 for the offence of dropping litter.
Excuse me, sir, can you come back, please? Calm down. Calm down.
No, I'm not doing that.
Calm down. Stay there, sir.
Things calm down and John issues the fine. It may be £60, but if it's any consolation, all the smokers caught get a free portable ashtray. In Leicester, after hours of hard slog, Suicide Sid and his partner Ian have cleared the 4-bed house. All done and dusted then, until they check the garden.
Oh, look at this, man. I thought we'd finished, I did. Oh, I don't know how it is.
The contents of the shed are a setback, but at least Sid can take out some of his frustration on the garden fencing. And the old door.
That's just a tap.
The boys can't take away the discarded fridges as they have to be disposed of by a specialist team, but Sid always takes precautions before leaving them behind.
But I always take the doors off, you know, with kids around. You don't know if like a little kid jumps inside one, because there's enough room for a kid. It only needs someone else to see something heavy on top. You ain't going to get out the fridge, is there?
The end's in sight. There's one last push required. It's been a long haul, but eventually it seems their work is done.
And I can honestly say this house is completely finished, which I'm glad. I expect an easy one on a Monday, but you don't expect this one on a Monday. I'm going to put my feet up for 5 minutes now and drink as much water as I can.
1 a.m. in London's West End, and some of the capital's stragglers are struggling to get a cab home. With the tube system now closed to the public, Brian and his specialist abseiling team can set to work. They're going to clean some of the more awkward places at the Westminster station. For Brian, it's a race against time.
We've got just over 3.5 hours to clean the top of this pipe and wash the sides of the escalators and these beams down the side here. They can't open the station until we're all out. So that's why we have to be out, finished 4 o'clock, packing up and all ready to go.
With only a 3-hour night shift, it will take Brian and his team 12 weeks to clean the station. They have to be very careful. This type of cleaning is highly dangerous. Lee and James need all their years of experience.
You have to do about 1,500 hours on the ropes. Every 3 years you have to go to do your course again.
You back yourself up as many times as you can. You have to. You know, just the slightest mistake you do could cost you dearly, you know.
The first job for Lee is to vacuum this beam before washing it down. Dust is one of the main problems on the tube system. It comes from everywhere. From the train brakes, from the passengers, it's a constant battle to control. The tube station environment is unique.
This place, the dust rises. Instead of dust falling here, in London Underground, the dust rises with the tunnels and the air going through the tunnel that rises. So you see, he's hoovered this, and 10 minutes later, you can feel the dust. It doesn't take long. 4 weeks ago, we hoovered this, and dust is now coming on. And I shall take you down now to one we haven't hoovered yet. Here's one what's not been hoovered, if you can see how dirty it is.
With the clock ticking, Lee's made good headway with the vacuum cleaner.
But at the moment, Lee's has just gone around hoovered the top of the tubular pipe, and now he's just going to lower the hoover down, and we're going to start washing.
Even though their equipment is fairly modern, washing down has to be done in a more traditional fashion.
We have to do it the sort of the old-fashioned way, throwing rags up, because if you've got a bucket up there, start knocking, it could fall down, spill everywhere.
As the deadline of 4:30 a.m. approaches, Brian's feeling confident.
We've got 30 minutes, and we'll definitely be out here by 4:30.
The boys have finished the cleaning on time, but as they pack away their gear, safety must always come first.
Lee's now bagging the rope. He's pulling the rope through his hand to make sure there's no damaged bits to a rope, which we do every time when we pack the rope up. And the bloke who always work with the rope, pack his own rope up as well.
For Brian, it's been a successful night's work.
The blokes have done well, everything's done, and hopefully we'll start all again tomorrow night for the next 3 months.
Since the filming of the show, Sid and Ian's hard work has paid off. What was a nightmare house was let immediately. Jason and Kevin continue to outwit the gulls. Enforcement Officer John is still waiting to pounce. And Brian and the boys are, as ever, hanging about.